are. So I'm Michelle Goodrick, and my obsession in life, my passion, has always been trying to figure out what is the most effective way to provide health and healing. So I started to get out and start to explore, because as I'm traveling the world, I got to meet so many different people from so many different cultures, and then learning Spanish was a way to open up a whole new world as well. And you start to see the variety of existence, and you start to see patterns. Started to notice a whole lot of patterns of like what is effective, what is not effective, what is harmful, what is not harmful, what is healing. And this is when I really was like, oh wow, okay. And you start to see the repetition of true principles and true concepts, and in that repetition of, in the observation of true principles and true concepts that are repeated in various circumstances, which Patanjali also talks about in the sutras as that one of the aspects of truth. You can see it repeated in multiple different ways, just like you would in the scientific method, right? It's that same kind of thing. That's what kept pulling me back into yoga. These true principles of you. It's you who's the hero of your destiny. It's you. You have to get inside of yourself to figure this out. You can't keep looking to somebody else. You can't keep looking to the outside world. And that has taken me through psychology. It's taken me through to study a master's, to go off and then do research, and eventually through all kind of the academic world, I got really disillusioned because the statistics were not very promising. So I was like, well, what's going on here? Why is this not working? That was on my head, right? And I was also suffering with my own deep depression. I got to a point where my ex would actually be worried about coming home and not knowing if I was going to be there. So that's when I really started to dive into and take very seriously yoga. And I really do think that that's really what saved my life. It's been a journey of like 10 years of just really understanding it from the inside out. I've had some wonderful, wonderful, wonderful teachers in my life. I've integrated another technique called Yamana body rolling, which has been really helpful and create space. And that's everything I'm trying to teach people. I'm like, it's all about creating space. When there's pain, whether it's mental, whether it's physical, whether it's emotional, spiritual, energetic, whatever it is you want to call it, it's because there's a lack of space. In yoga, they talk about akasha, which is this sense of space, and then prana, which is this idea of vital energy. And within physics, where's the greatest amount of energy in the world? Well, it's not in the sun. It's not in material form. It's in the spaces in between. And this I just see in every single asana, every single yogic form, and all of its philosophy. It's always trying to come back to that. It's always trying to help you remember and feel, not just think about it. Because you can think about it and you're like, oh, that's interesting, but to feel it, get it into the body and understand that the space is where your energy is. The space is where your creativity is. The space is where joy is. When you're practicing yoga in its truest form, when you go into these physical forms, you're constantly moving in opposition of one another, between the left, the right side, between up and down, and you're constantly doing these kinds of internal actions to create space in between, constantly. And it's that space in between that allows you to experience this unnamed thing, which is joy, I would call it. I would say that is the space of joy. So that's been my own personal journey, and it's been beautiful because I've been able to take so many students through that as well. I worked for many years in Seville, Spain, where I had my own center and I ran my own yogic therapy classes and trainings. And one thing is to feel and experience in yourself the power of that body work. And it's another thing to see it in people outside of you. But there was still something that was stuck. And then I was like, I don't know what it is. I mean, I was doing yoga daily, I was breathing, I was observing, I was meditating. I was like, nah, what's going on? I'm still feeling there's some, I got to a point that I was like, there's something that I just can't seem to break through. And that's when I found ayahuasca up in Barcelona, Spain. And it really was like this, it was a lock. It unlocked something. That quite possibly, if I had just continued with my practice, maybe at some point in the future it would have got it unlocked. But the plant medicine, and this is with the ayahuasca as well with the mushrooms, seems to put oil in a door that otherwise would have been really difficult to open. And that's what it did. And I ended up coming to Mexico because of everything that happened with COVID in Spain. So yeah, went deep into the plant medicine here in Mexico. And it's a very intense experience. And if you don't know how to integrate it, I think it can be very harmful. And that's with all of the medicines. And this was something I saw many times in the ceremonies, that people would go, but they wouldn't know how to integrate the experience. And so they would just go back again and again and again and again. And so I was so grateful that I had all of this knowledge in me already with the body work, with the yoga work. And so I took off for 7 days, did my own little mini yoga retreat where I went into deep fasting, deep breath work, deep yogic work. And it was truly mystical. It was truly mystical and transformative. So the plant medicine unlocked that door, but it was going in afterwards with the yoga, with the breath work, with the deep meditation that I was able to integrate that whole experience. So I didn't feel the need to just keep going back again and again and again. Now, it doesn't mean that the plant medicine is something I don't need anymore, because there's still many doors to go in and unlock, but it's not something that, it's not an escape route, I guess is a way to say it. So that has been my experience, is that with the body work, with the breath work, and with going in and meditating and observing, you don't need to be dependent on the medicine either. And that is where I think true health and healing comes. Once you find your own autonomy, your own self-agency, that's when real joy can be experienced. In yoga, they talk a lot about, there's dukkha and there's sukha. So dukkha is this idea of suffering, and sukha is this idea of being able to be in peace and ease. And the dukkha really is when you give up your agency to some external form or some external idea, to some trauma, you could say. And that results in addiction. And of course, what is addiction? Well, it's the giving up of your autonomy to some other form. And that's why we suffer. And now they're starting to study and publish all of this, peer-reviewed literature that was lacking when I was studying psychology, on how incredibly important it is to release the trauma from the body. Because when you have a trauma, basically the language aspect of your brain shuts down. It stops working. And so if you want to get in and release that trauma, you can't get in it through talking. You have to get into the body, and you have to be able to open it and release it. And this has explained so much to me. I was like, well, this is why if I'm in a form, all of a sudden I feel like I'm going to cry, or I feel like there's a sense of fear. It's because there's something that needs to be released from the past that stays in the body. That has been my journey, is to figure out and to keep figuring out what are the most effective ways to get in and find that autonomy. And you can't do it by just being in your head. It just been quite a few years to realize you have to get out of the head. It doesn't mean you have to ignore it, but you have to be able to integrate the body and the mind, and understand that they are actually the same thing, the chitta, if you will. of existence. And it is in that integration that we find wholeness. That's what my passion and my obsession is and always has been.